Are you rich? Go on, answer honestly, because here's the strange thing about Britain. Almost nobody says yes. Ask a banker in the city, ask a nurse in Newcastle, ask a landlord with 3 flats in Surrey, and you'll hear the exact same answer every single time. Rich? No, not me. I'm just comfortable. Or that far more British phrase, we're the squeezed middle. We are a nation that refuses to feel wealthy. The struggling call themselves comfortable, the comfortable call themselves squeezed. And the genuinely wealthy, they simply point at someone with a slightly bigger house and insist the real money is always somewhere just above them. Nobody is rich, everyone is coping. But feelings aren't facts. So tonight, let's put the feelings to one side and look at the cold, hard numbers here in 2026. Where do you actually stand? Are you doing better than the average Briton, or is the average Briton quietly doing better than you think? Let's climb the ladder. We start with income, and the first trap almost everyone falls into. There are 2 very different average salaries in this country, and they tell 2 completely different stories. The first is the median. Line up every full-time worker in Britain, poorest to richest, in one enormous queue, and the person standing dead in the middle earns roughly £39,000 a year. That is the true midpoint of the nation. Half the country earns more, half the country earns less. It is the most honest number we have. The second is the mean, the simple arithmetic average, and that number is noticeably higher, sitting at around £46,000. So why the gap? One word, the city. A relatively small handful of enormous earners, the hedge fund managers, the corporate lawyers, the FTSE chief executives on millions a year, drag that average upward like a magnet. The mean describes a version of Britain that most Britons don't actually live in. So here is your first reality check, and it's a big one. If you earn £40,000 a year, you probably feel painfully average, ordinary, nothing to write home about. But look at that median again. On £40,000, you are already out-earning more than half of the entire working population. You don't feel above average, but statistically, you already are. Hold on to that feeling, because it is about to become the theme of this entire video. Let's keep climbing. What does it actually take to reach the top 10%? As an individual, you'd need to earn around £70,000 a year. As a household, 2 incomes under one roof, you're looking at roughly £130,000. Now picture that household. A senior secondary school teacher married to a middle manager somewhere out in the leafy home counties. On paper, they are a top 10% family, elite, and yet, do they feel rich? Not for a single second. Their money seems to vanish before it even arrives. The mortgage takes an enormous bite. Then comes the council tax, the energy bills that never quite seem to fall, the childcare that somehow costs more than a second mortgage, and the frozen tax thresholds, quietly handing a bigger slice of every pay rise straight over to HMRC. By the numbers, this family is winning comfortably. By the feeling, they are just about surviving the month. This is the great British paradox, captured perfectly inside a single semi-detached house. Keep going though, and the air gets thin very quickly. To crack the top 5%, an individual needs to earn around £85,000 a year, and the top 1%. This is where public perception collapses entirely. Most people guess the figure must be astronomical, £500,000, easily, maybe far more. The real number is around £180,000 a year for a single individual. At the household level, you'd need over £400,000 to join the top 1% of families. That's a huge income, but it is almost certainly lower than you imagined. The top 1% isn't a stadium packed with oligarchs and super yacht owners. It is mostly surgeons, senior partners, and specialists who, believe it or not, still lie awake worrying about their pension. But now, we get to the part that changes absolutely everything, because income is only ever half the story. Income is the river flowing in. Wealth is the reservoir you've actually managed to build. And the moment we switch from what you earn to what you own, the whole picture explodes. The median household net worth in Britain, that is everything you own, minus everything you owe, including your property and your pensions, is roughly £300,000. Read that again. The typical British household is quietly sitting on around £1/3 So why on earth does nobody feel it? 2 reasons. First, the property skew. For millions of families, that wealth isn't cash in the bank, it is locked in the bricks. Around 40% of the nation's household wealth is tied up in property. It's the value of a semi-detached house, you cannot spend without selling the roof over your own head. It looks magnificent on a spreadsheet, but you can't buy your weekly shop with your hallway. It simply isn't liquid. Second, the pension. Another huge slice of that net worth, roughly 35% of it, lives quietly inside private pension pots, your workplace scheme. Or a SIP, if you're self-employed, compounding away in the background for a version of you that's still decades into the future. It's real, it's growing, but you can't lay a finger on it today. Add in the money hiding inside an ISA, and you finally start to see the truth. Most British wealth is completely invisible. It's tied up, locked away, and patiently waiting. And this is exactly where geography and age split this country clean in two. Picture a 30-year-old in London earning a spectacular £90,000. That's a top 5% income. And yet, renting a flat, owning no property, holding almost no assets, with a student loan still trailing along behind, high income, near zero wealth. Now picture a retired couple in a quiet Cotswolds village. Their income is modest, just a couple of pensions ticking over. But they own their stone cottage outright, and between them, they've built pension pots worth well over £1 million. Low income, enormous wealth. So who is actually richer? On the income ladder, the Londoner wins in a landslide. But on the wealth ladder, it isn't even a contest. The couple in the Cotswolds are miles and miles ahead. This is precisely why comparing salaries alone is a fool's game. Income is a single snapshot. Wealth is the whole film. And that gap between the two ladders has grown so wide that a typical worker, saving a normal salary, would now need more than 50 years of earnings, well over £1 million in total, just to climb from the middle of the wealth ladder up to the top. You don't get there by simply working harder. You get there by owning assets early and then letting time do the heavy lifting for you. So let's zoom all the way out. Yes, the cost of living crisis has been genuinely brutal. Yes, the bills are relentless. And yes, it is harder now than it was for your parents' generation. Every word of that is true. But you have to hold two ideas in your head at once, because here is the other truth. Britain remains one of the single wealthiest nations on the entire planet. If you have a stable job, food in the fridge, and a roof over your head tonight, then on a global scale, you are sitting comfortably inside the top 10% of every human being alive. Not the top 10% of Britain, the top 10% of Earth. The average life you feel like you're failing to beat is, by world standards, an absolutely extraordinary one. Which finally brings us to the real reason none of this ever feels true. We don't compare ourselves to the national average. We never have. We don't measure our lives against the median Briton, or the global poor, or the cold, honest statistics. We compare ourselves to the person on LinkedIn announcing their shiny new promotion, to the neighbour who just rolled a brand new Audi onto the driveway, to the old school friend whose holiday photos always look just that little bit better than ours. And that, right there, is the trap. Because wealth, measured that way, is a moving target. A horizon that quietly retreats every single time you take a step toward it. Earn more, and your definition of rich simply drifts upward to match. There is no salary, no house, and no number that will ever finally make you feel like you've arrived, because the comparison never, ever ends. So maybe the real question was never, are you rich? Maybe the better question is this. By the standards of almost everyone who has ever lived, you are already doing better than the average. The only thing left to decide is whether you'll ever actually let yourself believe it. If you learned something from this video, make sure to like and hit subscribe. See you in the next one.